Well, Pope was a prolific artist, a performance artist. He also had a background in theater. He had a working class upbringing. So maybe we should talk about a little bit about like the actual form that the work was in. So what was the performance of Crawl? I think the title suggests that it involved crawling, but there was a little bit more to it than that. So the artist was, the work was done under the guise of an alter ego of the artist named Mr. Poots, and it involved Pope dressing up in a business suit and carrying a small potted flower while crawling on his hands and knees around Thompson Square Park in New York. And it was done sort of in the morning rush hour.
Hal Foster, in his book The Return of the Real, he explores how like modern artists, they show like the real world, so like identity, like, or like real problems using their body as well. So that's what like Pope.L is doing through like his performance, showing pain, like the act of crawling on the floor, like getting dirty.
It's sort of like a reference to the real struggle of like just existing. The crawling itself is a sort of manifestation of that, the struggle of just getting through your daily tasks.
I feel like crawling is a very vulnerable state to be in.
Yeah.
It's, you know, like you don't crawl if you're, you know, able-bodied, well, happy, and okay. Right. You know, you crawl when there's a problem, when there's an issue, when, you know, it's a vulnerable state. And so I feel like it's like outwardly expressing this vulnerability that, you know, he's I guess demonstrating, would that be the right word? Yeah. Or I guess like like that's happening in the park and things that are happening politically. He's kind of expressing that with his body through his actions.
Yes, yeah.
And he also had a little flower, right? He had a,
Yeah, the little flower. I think the flower to me helps to sort of point the performance in a humorous direction. And I know that it's talking about the work speaks to some issues that are not humorous, but I think it's quite important how humor is used in this piece. Pope himself has described that, like, you know, thinking about what's he going to explain to people if they ask him what is he doing in this performance, and his answer would have been, I'm working. And I think that's just, it's just quite a humorous image to have, you know, somebody crawling around on their hands and knees in a business suit downtown New York proclaiming that they're at work. A part to me that stood out is the use of humor to just sort of talk about some really heavy, dark points.
I think it's really interesting, the flower, is that this one article that I read, which was titled Public Space, Private Place, and it was by Andrew O. Matson and Stephen R. Duncombe. They talk about the story about this one guy who they planted a bunch of flowers in the park, in the Thompson Square Park, and then this guy in an act of protest actually pulled all the flowers out. And he said he viewed the planting of flowers in the park as a window dressing, as an attempt to cure the grave social ills that had beset the community. Pulling the flowers up was his attempt to prevent others from escaping the depressing situation even momentarily, in hopes that this would move people to confront these issues rather than overlook them. So it's really interesting kind of thinking about that in the context of him holding this flower. I feel like it's kind of the opposite of that, you know, as this person was saying that the flowers were there to, like, he pulled them out. He didn't want people he wanted people to see and address the situation. And you know, he didn't want people to escape it and like confront it. Whereas I feel like through crawling, through being vulnerable and holding this flower, he's both like making people address it, but also like saying that it's like there's still humanity in it.
I feel like what you're trying to say is that the flower, the potted plant, like he's trying to protect it, because that's the only thing that of humanity. Is that what?
It's kind of just like different ways of like viewing something. This guy's like more like, I guess, negative, and he's like, I don't want flowers because I don't want people to escape this. Whereas he's like, well, you can't escape this, but there can still be beauty in it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I also think about like the environmental setting of where the work took place when I'm thinking about the use of the flower, and the work was performed in a park, which, you know, may or may not have had trees and things, but the flowers is sort of an overt reference to nature in this sort of unnatural constructed landscape of a city, bringing up references to this sort of human struggle of trying to survive in this constructed environment, which is so often designed to oppress and to just not designed with human interest. So
I think the suit is like represents like the working class.
It's like a suit is something you wear to business, you wear to, you know, to work, and especially like this park as well, which, you know, has had a history of, you know, union strikes and labor protests and whatnot. So specifically wearing a like a you know, a white collared workman's suit to, you know, this park that's had this history. It's a form of protest, you know. It's
well, and then what does that suit being worn by a black man in this sort of historical working dominated city?
I think he's going back to like his family poverty with his suit, because again, like a suit's supposed to be like, oh, you're neat and all that, but he's physically dragging the suit, dirtying the suit. So I think that's a sort of like agency, or like that's like a protest where he's just highlighting like his working class like status.
he's not wearing like workwear or like, you know, like a construction suit or something. He's wearing a business suit, and there's intentionality behind that.
Yes, yeah. So I think there's a little bit more we can unpack about the work in reference to the idea of like space and place and private and public. So the work was performed sort of in these streets, which are in theory a very public space, but in reality they're very privately for automobiles. So it's hard not to talk, or it's hard not to, you know, make a work in public without it touching on those issues about public space and ownership and rights to a space, and inserting your bodies in spaces that maybe they don't belong, and what that does and what type of reactions that can cause. Like the performance was stopped by a concerned passerby as well. So
he was in a public space performing this act. He wasn't able to exist in the way that he wanted to in a theoretical public space, which is the same thing with this park, is that, you know, it's technically a public space, technically open to all, yet, you know, there's park rangers, there's police, it's being monitored, you can only exist in a certain way. If, you know, your body doesn't exist in the way that it's mandated to in this park, even though it's a public space, they don't accept that and they don't want that there.
Which I think goes really sort of in parallel with the idea of having a black body and historically not being the owner of that black body, or just sort of manifesting inside of that black body. Brings up the issues of, again, ownership and possession, public and private, and all of these things. So I think the act of inserting a black body into the public space as a vehicle for work, for performance work or for artwork, sort of really turns that notion of like the private and public space on its head.
Yeah, it's like, you know, this is you're supposedly one thing, but it's being enforced in another way, I guess is kind of like a bit of a metaphor for also like the black body and how he was existing, is how his body was existing in this space, and how black bodies have historically existed in certain spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, so what are you guys trying to say? Like the park is a public or private?
It's kind of both. You're free to exist there, but it's you know, it's private because it's owned by someone. There's someone that are making rules there. There's someone that is dictating how bodies can exist, what they can do.
And you know, whether that's somebody that owns it is an individual or the city of New York, it doesn't really matter. It's a body which governs, and a body which governs also mediates the body. So
yeah. There's rules and regulations within this public space. So is it really public?
And then it wasn't exclusively done in the park. It was also carried out on the roads and sidewalks, which are another gray area of public and private space. It's a public road, that you have access to, but it's technically owned by a private entity which represents the public.
Pope.L's performance, like in the park, like did he purposely do that, or is it just a coincidence?
No, I think he did purposely do it because that's the only way to really involve the public in the piece, in the way that the public was involved in the piece. Imagine if the same work was performed in the hallway of a university or something, it would be less publicly accessible. The audience would be more censored.
I guess universities is less of a public space. It's a lot more regulated in who can be in a university space. So it's a lot more like, there's a reason he went to this park. This park, it's a massive spot of counterculture and demonstrations and protests, and it's a really reflection of the political state of New York. And the 90s, a time of a lot of financial difficulties, and gentrification was rampant, especially in this neighborhood at this time. And so it was a protest to a lot of that, and this gentrification put a lot of people out of their homes on the streets who ended up in the park.
And the park being such a public space, I think it also touches on this sort of the notion of the politics of display and showing things to the public, and sort of curating what is shown to the public. We have all of this historical context of like the police removing people from this public park because it's deemed unacceptable to have homelessness in the public park.
Wait, can we come back to that? Because you guys touch on like a key concept, like an important key concept in Amelia Jones's Body Art Performing the Subject, where the key concept is intersubjectivity, where she says that it means that the artwork's meaning comes from both the artist and the audience. So about the park and the public sphere and the private sphere, and Pope.L, basically, I guess you guys are right to touch on how like that's like a place where there's like a lot of people, so like, and different like diversities and different experiences. So when they come together, basically they share the experience and like create meaning together. And I guess if Pope.L did do his performance elsewhere, maybe the meaning would shift, would differ.
Yeah, I think it would.
If he did it in the suburbs, like, or like a really quiet area, maybe like,
I wonder, this is just a personal thought, but I wonder what that would do to the performance if it was done in a sort of suburban neighborhood instead of a vibrant, urban setting in downtown New York.
Yeah. I think also like the time that it was performed as well, in summer 1991 in front of this park, like that's so important and pivotal to his performance that if you were to take that out of it, would it still have the same meaning? It would completely shift and change the meaning. The meaning that we are at least finding from this work is through where he performed it and how he performed it and when as well.
Yeah.
So you take that out and it's completely changed.
Yeah.
So.
Wait, I'm gonna make it complicated.
Yeah.
But do you guys like know about like the mediated body? Because that also shifts the meaning of the artwork, because people right now, they're not looking, they can't like physically experience his crawl, it's like, it's documented, it's photographed, like, so right now it's just like whatever you see, it's on there. So that also shifts our meaning. So we can't really come to like a conclusion of like the true meaning because of that.
Yeah, and I think this is what makes art so fascinating, is that a man crawling through the street can evoke so much discussion and have so much context behind it. I think this work and this discussion connects really well to one of the themes that we've been talking about recently in class, and that is Black performance art, and specifically in reference to the Ian Macmillan text Unruly Polyvocality.
Yeah.
The networks of Black performance art. So Black performance art from the outset is a vexed form. It is inextricably linked to histories of subjugation, imperialism, and personal sovereignty. After all, as Tevye Nyong'o asks, if Black people have historically been reduced to our bodies, bought, sold, displayed, purchased, and used as chattel, what does it mean for an art form to take that former commodity as its medium? Is it an act of reclaiming, healing, theft? If Black people and Black bodies have been so historically subject to violence, and racism, everything that sort of came with imperialism and these racist ideologies, what does it mean when a Black body is used as an artwork or to create an artwork? So it's just asking, like, what kind of challenges does the act of just being Black present?
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's also about like agency. It's a form of like reclaiming, and
Yeah.
using his own body as artwork. He's like reclaiming it. He's saying it's my own. I want to use it as this piece. This is what
Yeah.
I want to say with my body.
Yeah, and
You know?
Yuri Macmillan sort of references this as self-determination as well. Sort of, this reclamation of agency.
I don't think Pope.L is using, maybe it's just me, I don't think Pope.L is using like his performance as agency, but rather just like showcasing that like through his crawling, especially that like Black male in America, like they're inferior, they're looked down.
Yeah.
I don't think for me, I don't think he's like thinking about like highlighting agency and like opacity.
I think that's a good point, and I think that the fact that that he's crawling is also speaking to that same issue. Crawling, you're on your hands and knees. When you're down and out. You're not in your best form, and to sort of place a Black male body in this state, like we have the expressions and the phrases of getting back up on your feet, or you're not on your feet, and sort of the implication is that when you're not on your feet, you're not whole, you're not a complete,
You're less than.
you're less than. So
I think he's like showing like vulnerability, and that also is like courageous, especially like as a marginalized like person, marginalized body, to go out in public and to so and so crow, in front of people, no warnings or anything. What if like me as an Asian, like I start crowing, that could like I'm marginalizing my identity and my body like even more than
Yeah.
So how would you say that this performance has or is a manifestation of a happening?
Well, because was Crap Out the one that he was learning under for a little bit?
Yes.
Yes,
He's
okay,
a student of.
Yeah, the Pratt. Well, it's because I guess like a happening is, we've kind of defined it as like a performance art, but also something that happens now and only now. It's happening in this moment, and it's not necessarily like an ongoing situation or art piece. Whereas like if you paint something, right? You paint this and then you stick it on a wall, and wow, now everyone can look at your painting for thousands of years. Whereas if you perform a happening, it's in this moment. It's also like to an unconsensual audience as well, people who weren't expecting this, who necessarily don't know what's going on, and it just kind of happens.
Yeah, I think maybe not unconsenting, but unsuspecting.
Yeah,
because
would be a better word.
When you are in public, you consent to being in public,
Sure.
and whatever happens in public is a matter of public.
Yeah, I guess you're in a space where other people are going to be there and are going to exist, and you're, by being in that space, consenting to witnessing and experiencing other people in public.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think like Pope.L's like performance could be happening because of like it's like in the now, in the present, but also to have a happening, I feel like you have to have audience engage in the
Yes.
artwork. Because, for instance, remove the people in William Pope's The Crawl. Now, what's gonna be the meaning? you
But
know?
he did have an engagement. He had someone stop him, and that ended his happening. He had someone stop him, and the police got involved, and then he could no longer perform his act.
Yeah, and
I
it's-
think that is a happening.
yeah,
The intervention.
I think that is what makes it the happening.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
But take
That
that out of
almost-
the equation. Like, now what is it?
That almost created the work as a happening rather than ending it.
Yeah.
It's
I think we should talk about like the intervention of this act and kind of how that changes the meaning of the performance in itself.
It's kind of funny, like, the fact that the police had to be involved because Pope.L made people uncomfortable. I think that was his job, especially in performance art. Like,
Yeah.
artists want to make people like feel emotions, and
I think the discomfort was a big thing that Pope was trying to make you feel.
Yeah.
The work has another title, which I can't even say. And that's another theme that goes to his work, whether it's him smearing mayonnaise over his, body, or being made to feel uncomfortable is a theme of viewing his work.
Yeah, well, that's the theme of happenings as well. It's meant to be confrontational. It's meant to make you think and be uncomfortable, exist in these spaces of discomfort. Which is, I think, is kind of interesting to bring it back to the flower thing that I had said earlier about the person who was taking out the flowers. To quote, as an attempt to prevent others from escaping the depressing situation, even momentarily, in hopes that this would move people to confront these issues rather than overlooking them. Like this happening forces people to confront these issues. It forces people to think about it and be in that space.
And you acknowledge them.
Yeah, exactly.